Great, the family farm. One of the things that I wanted to do when I brought you here was just share some of the things that I think about. The analogies between investing and sound investing and farming are great. And so some of the things that I do around here, one is fence building. I built the pastures, I should say, myself and Seth and my boys built the pastures that we have around here. And one of the things that not everybody realizes, but a fence is held up by the corners. If you see a fence that's falling down, it's falling down because the corners failed. And the sound investing is also held up by certain corners or certain pillars. The four corners that I'm using in this example is great coaching, owning equities, diversifying and rebalancing. Those are four corners or four pillars to a successful investment strategy that work. Let me see if there's, oh yeah. So this is the fence that I built on the north side, and it's, and so when it's built right, simply how it works is this tension pulls this bar this way, and it pulls the corner out. And while that's pulling the corner out, the wire that's that you're stringing is pulling the corner back, and so this whole thing is very square, the tension is keeping that pole straight up. And that's how we build the corners on the pastures, and we have to maintain those. Sometimes the horses will crib and eat the bar, and then we have to replace those. But you keep the corners solid, and you'll keep your pasture up. They fall down, and this is what happens, or that's what happens. It looks nice, but for a picture, but it really doesn't do well for the cattle. Because they get out, and we've had the horses get out before, and then the neighbors call, and then we have to run around and try to get it in. So great coaching. What is great coaching? It's educational events like this. We want our clients to come. I remember one of my clients said that, hey, we've been to it before, and we love you, we trust you, so why don't you spend the dinner on somebody else? That is not at all what we want. We want you to come. We want you to reconnect. Even if you've heard some of this stuff before, you need to hear it again. I tell people I go to church every Sunday. Why? Is because I'm so fickle, and I can forget what's true, and I need to hear it over and over again, and so do you. The media is pumping lies to you every day, day in, day out, 24/7. If you come to an event once or twice a year, it's the least you can do to counter a lot of the garbage that you're hearing otherwise. So annual reviews, we've made a commitment to reach out to everybody for annual reviews, and we'd love to get you either a phone call or in the office just to revisit and to look at what your plans are and to make sure you're on track. We're using some software that helps us project that and just help people simply understand what it is they're doing in the context of why they're doing it. We have some simple tools to help you understand why it is you need insurance, why you need, simply spend less than you make, and then how do your investments grow, and what can you expect by putting a little bit of money away for a long time. Culture and just any questions you might have. We get questions a lot of times, and I get questions from some of you here in the room that even when you know the answers, say, hey Steve, I know what you're going to say, but tell me again. I'm a little bit nervous about what's happening. The presidential elections are coming up, and some people are nervous about that, and I'm not happy with the choices that I have either. But here's what I know is the markets don't react to the presidential elections the way we anticipate them. We've done studies before to see whether or not a Democrat in the office or a Republican in office has an impact on what the markets do, and there's no data to support that one is any better than the other. And so things like that are things that we're happy to talk about. Harvesting and planting. This is one that I see a lot. We've had some really bad years. We've been here for 15 years. I was telling somebody that it was 9/11, 2001. We were picking out the hardware for our cupboards, and we moved in a month later. I always remember when we moved out here. But there's been some really dry years where the crops just withered out in the fields. There's been really wet years where large portions of the fields either flooded or it was so wet in the fall that they couldn't harvest. There's been great years. There's years when everything went well. The weather was perfect, and the crops and the yields were tremendously high, and the prices crashed because there was so much supply that the demand, the prices went bad. Farming is not easy. There's lots of ththings that can go wrong. There can be equipment problems. There can be injuries. There can be fuel prices. So gasoline goes up, and that costs production. you wonder how a farmer can make it. It's not easy, but the farming community pulls together. They're a community of farmers that every day continue to work, and they realize and they know that after generation, that success in farming doesn't come 1 year at a time. It comes over generations. And if you look around here when you drove in, there's some huge farms that have been around here for 3, 4, 5 generations, hundreds of years, and have done tremendously well. And one generation after the next works together. And so when a farmer has a really bad year because things are dry, the next year they're too wet and they're just not producing the yields that they expected to. The next year, what does the farmer do? If he's had 3 bad years in a row, and the 4th year, what does he do? He plants his crops again, right? And he fertilizes them and invests everything he has into that next crop. And he knows that from 1 year to the next, there might not be success, but over the long term, there certainly is, and it's been true. The same thing with a prudent investor. We don't know when the bad years are and the good years are going to be. But when you invest over the long term, $100,000 invested, doesn't matter what risk category you have. These different lines. This is the most aggressive, and then since 1999, $100,000 investment would have been $262,000, and then it just goes down if you're taking less and less risk. Not everybody can handle the same amount of risk. That's fine. If you can't handle as much risk, we'll go in something that has a little less volatility. So if you're older, if you're drawing income of it, but if you're younger and you have the time and you're able to handle the volatility, the reward for being disciplined over the long term is very, very good. And so the analogy to farming in that regard is the same. You plant again, you work the field, and you harvest. And that's how. And then generational investing. The other thing that I love about the farming analogy is just the way that it feeds one generation to the next. And so I think one of the things that farming doesn't inherently, but we have to do it intentionally. It's not something that we can't do. Dave Ramsey says, "Begin as you intend to go," and I think that's important. It's think about what you're doing. The 3 generations that we looked at early when we first started the presentation, the youngest 0 to 30, you're teaching kids a work ethic. They're learning skills. They're experiencing things hands-on. In the farm, that's what happens. The kids have chores, and they're learning how to work, and that work ethic's being developed. And they're understanding what the values are as they're growing up. As adults, they begin to take on more responsibility and leadership roles. They start to take operational control. So the farm, the farm gets the day-to-day operations of the farm gets handed to that middle generation, the adults. They start building and growing and innovating. I said humbled by adversity. I think the adversity in my career, as I've been building my business, has been tremendous in humbling me. I think about the things that I wish I had done differently, and realize that something, God knew that I would have been just an arrogant pig if everything had always gone right, and that adversity has taught me far more than what I could have learned otherwise. And then as elders, ownership begins to transfer, and so not only operation control as you simplify and slow down, you share stories of lessons learned. You teach from a joyful and optimistic perspective, instill hope and cast vision, and that's how those 3 work. We had those up here on the board. The first home, baby, school. You're starting to establish your beliefs. 30 to 60 years old, busy building a career, a family's growing, leadership, you're saving money, your beliefs are being tested. You're starting to figure out, the things I believe, are they true? Do they hold up? And then and then retirement, slowing down, simplify, enjoying grandkids. There's something about grandkids that I don't get. I don't have any, but I was talking to Dr. Beakey a couple of Sundays ago, and he had just his first grandchild, and he was saying, they are wonderful. And I'm like, what were so bad about the kids? I thought the kids were great. And he said, well, this is totally different. But I think part of it is perspective. They have the perspective on life that just the urgencies and the stresses that oftentimes consume the younger people are more balanced, I think, as they grow older. But those 3, and on the farm, we see that enough in the farming analogy. those beliefs are handed down, actions and results. Those beliefs are handed down side by side as you as kids work with their parents, and their parents are assuming responsibility from their parents, and that generation is all represented there on the farm. That's when it works well. When it's not working well, and I see that a lot. I talk to people that are that feel like they've been jaded by the financial investments and the bad advice they've been given over years, and they're frustrated, and they don't feel like the market works for them. And so John, that would be my dad. If John feels that way, and he feels like that he's got nothing to offer as far as advice to me, then he's not going to say anything to me, and I'm not going to have much, and I'm going to be figuring it out on my own. Oftentimes, I'm looking to the financial industry for advice, and the advice they're giving me is helping them more than it's helping me. And John's certainly not giving anything to Seth, who's trying to figure it out on his own. And what it does is it produces a cycle that really destroys the opportunity and the hope and the benefit over time. And so that cycle just negatively impacts. Seth's figuring it out on his own. Steve's not sure what to do, and John's saying, hey, figure it out by yourself, because I don't do what I did, is what I hear a lot of people saying. So when the beliefs and the actions and the results, when the right beliefs are producing the right actions, click, and the right results, it creates a positive cycle. And we see that in the farming community a lot. John is teaching Steve things that are true and right, and those beliefs are being passed down to Seth, and Seth's picking those up as well. And John is giving messages of hope and a promise, and saying, hey, you can, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to work hard. And in the farm, you see that from year to year. You see that you make sacrifices and tough choices from day to day. But you can do it, and the confidence that can be, and then it passes down again. And this is no news. There is no, just like, apparently there's this Facebook app that will take two people and they'll make a what would it be like if you did. So that's what that is. It's cutting edge, but it's, there's no announcements, honey. So don't get excited. But the point is that the decisions that I'm making right now, Seth is watching those, and we're talking about those, and we're talking about them intentionally. In a farming community, you would be working side by side, and he'd be picking up those skills because we'd be working together on it. But when we're transferring, and in a farming community, when you transfer wealth, you're transferring a farm. My goodness, you're not transferring something that you can spend and consume. You're transferring something that you need to grow and invest in, and it's a resource. And that's an idea that I think is oftentimes lost when you're transferring a 401k to your kids. Hey, here's $500,000. Look what we got. What do you want to do? It's oftentimes this idea of spending. My parents gave me an abundance of good things. It wasn't cash. It was a hope and a promise, a belief in things that are right and true, and the ability to grow those and do things that are extraordinary, that we're excited about. I mean, that's really what they gave me. And if there was any money, it's not money that we would need to spend. It's money that we could grow and invest and make things happen with. And that's really what I think the farming analogy does so well, because when one generation passes a farm to another, it's something that's been there for generations, and the expectation is that they should grow that and make something out of it. And I'm telling you, the farms that you see around here are tremendous, and the next generation is taking farming to a whole new level. The orchards, we used to go pick apples. The orchards that we used to go to are nothing like what they are right now. All the trees are smaller. Why? Because they get more yields out of those. And the trees, they force the branches into certain tiers so that they can do a better job harvesting and the bugs. They can kill the bugs. So the turkey farms and the chicken farms and the crops that they plant. So one generation improves on the other, and it gets better and better, and it creates efficiency. And it's hard to believe what the next generation can do, but the promise that they can is very exciting. I think that's it. So those are the when we thought about bringing it here, one of the things that I thought about was like, why is it that I'm so excited about farming? My background, when I was born on a farm. My dad was a dairy farmer, and he came to Michigan. And when he did, I always had this idea in the back of my mind that I wanted to own a big red barn on 40 acres. I was telling the folks over there that I had written that down once, and I never thought that would possibly happen. And the house burned down, and we were able to buy the shell and come out here and do something that we were excited about. Yes, somebody was counting the kids on the screen when it was up there. We do have 10 children, and Seth married a wonderful girl that is now our 11th daughter. But it's wonderful raising a family on a farm with knowing that those kind of values are, and teaching our kids a work ethic, teaching our kids to be able to work something, to grow something, to recognize that they can make something good out of what God's given them. And the same thing is true for us. God's given you each resources, and I'm going to trust that He gave you exactly what you need. And what our goal is to steward those resources to the best possible outcomes, to His glory and to our good. And so with that, I'm going to thank you again for being here.